Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something really quite special. It's not just a business case study.
No, not at all.
We're peeling back the layers on one of those, lightning strike moments, that really specific personal problem that when you solve it with a bit of ingenuity, maybe some empathy, it accidentally launches a whole company.
And a really specialized one at that.
Exactly. We're talking about how this single frustrating moment centered around classic video game consoles became the foundation for RetroGameBoyz LLC. It's incredibly specific, yet somehow also quite broad in its reach now.
It really is a compelling story. It's about what you might call engineering empathy.
Yeah.
And honestly, as a driver for innovation, that might be the purest kind.
How so?
Well, you often see tech companies chasing, the next big market trend,
Right.
right? But here, the motivation was just pure shared human experience.
Yeah.
This deep desire for a father to actually play classic games with his son, with his grandson, despite having a severe physical limitation.
A limitation that was stopping him.
Completely. And the intensity of that personal stake, that need, it translated directly into the passion behind the fix. And eventually, you see it in the rigorous quality control of the products they make today.
Our source material for this deep dive is, well, it's really a tribute. It's this deeply moving account from the company's creator. He details the whole evolution of this idea.
Yeah.
But before we even get into the circuit boards and manufacturing, we have to acknowledge where this all began. The creator shared an update, and it's important we lead with this.
Absolutely.
His father, who was the inspiration for this entire thing, sadly passed away back in 2019 from IPF, that's idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis.
And knowing that puts the whole story into such sharp focus immediately. This company, RetroGameBoyz, it's a debt of honor.
Yeah.
It was clearly never just about a hobby or, just a side business. It was about reclaiming that shared family time, that experience from a chronic disease that was just systematically taking away his ability to participate.
Taking away that function.
Right. And the success of the company, its global reach today, it really stands as this enduring tribute. It's a direct result of that initial mix of love, frustration, and just sheer determination.
It really shows us that sometimes real business value can come from the deepest wells of personal need. Okay, let's unpack this then. Section 1. The personal paddleist, the controller problem itself.
Right.
The scene starts somewhere pretty familiar, I think, to a lot of our listeners, anyone into retro gaming anyway.
Oh, yeah.
The account starts with that warmth, that shared nostalgia, thinking back to the Atari 2600 days. That was the console they had growing up.
The classic.
But the creator, he wanted to sort of broaden that nostalgia base. So he brings down two systems he hadn't owned as a kid. He wanted to add some new memories. And these were the Atari 7800 and the, how do you say it? The ColecoVision?
The ColecoVision, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut for some.
Yeah.
And that decision, bringing out these different consoles, it immediately sets up a contrast.
How?
Well, the Atari 2600 stick, it was simple, right? Just a stick, one button, basic. But the 7800 controller was different. And ColecoVision, that thing was bizarre.
Yeah, the keypad thing.
Right, like a little phone keypad and this chunky, really awkward grip. So you have this expectation, this excitement. We're going to play these great old school games. And that excitement just runs smack into this very solid, very painful physical wall.
And that wall was the severe rheumatoid arthritis his father suffered from. We really need to underline what this means physically.
It's crucial.
This isn't just, oh, my hand's a bit sore. This is a chronic autoimmune disease. It causes joint pain, stiffness, really significant swelling, sometimes even disfigurement, and over time, a serious decrease in movement and function.
And that directly impacts things like grip strength, fine motor control, exactly the things you need for those old controllers.
Right.
The creator talks about that exact moment it hit them. His dad simply couldn't hold the original controllers comfortably at all. And we have to remember, those designs were often terrible, even for people without arthritis.
Oh, for sure. The Atari 7800 controller, that little joypad thing, it was small, kind of sharp-edged.
Yeah, hard on the thumbs, designed for quick movements that really strain the joints.
And the creator even notes that. He says, even his thumbs ached a bit trying to use them.
Right.
But for his father, the impact was just immediate. Total. And you can imagine how heartbreaking. He was completely unable to work those awkward designs. He couldn't grip them.
Meaning he was just excluded.
Yeah. Excluded from playing with his son and grandson that night, just like that.
And that exclusion, that's the tipping point, isn't it? The controllers were supposed to be about connection, about sharing joy. bridging the past.
And instead, they became these instruments of frustration, isolation even.
Think about the emotional stakes there. It's not about losing a game. It's about losing the ability to even participate in this family ritual. And that failure of design, its inability to accommodate different human needs, that feels like a real injustice.
An injustice that demanded a fix.
Exactly, a technical solution.
It makes you realize how quickly that fun, nostalgic evening just flipped, didn't it? It became this urgent, high-stakes engineering challenge right there in the living room.
The whole mission shifted. It wasn't about making things slightly better or faster or whatever. It was about achieving basic accessibility.
Yeah.
Functionality.
Not a better controller for the average player.
No, it was about making a possible controller for the one user who desperately needed it.
It's fascinating, too, thinking about the context. Like, today in 2025, we have adaptive controllers for modern systems.
We do, thankfully.
But for these niche, older consoles, like the 8-bit systems, you often still rely on that original, flawed hardware. Or hope someone's made a mod.
Which raises that bigger question for product design, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How often does the really successful, maybe even scalable innovation come not from market research or tweaking tech, but from just absolute, undeniable personal need?
Yeah.
Here, the need was to physically reconnect a family through games. And that meant figuring out how to bypass decades of, frankly, pretty poor ergonomic design.
Okay, so section 2, the frustration's there, the need is clear, determination kicks in.
Right.
The creator, thinking like an analyst as he put it, starts digging. His first thought was, okay, I need a comfortable template. And where does he go?
The sacred place.
His retro gaming graveyard. That box of busted parts, old games, tangled wires. Every serious hobbyist knows that box.
Oh, absolutely. It's where the real magic happens sometimes, where you look at parts not for what they were, but for what they could be. Cross-platform modding starts there.
And what does he pull out? Of course, it's an old Nintendo NES controller.
The iconic rectangle.
And it was apparently a wreck. Yellowed, dented, frayed wires. But it was the perfect test candidate. Why? Because of that fundamental design.
It's shade.
He hands it to his dad and just says, pretend like you're playing.
And that insight is purely ergonomic at first, but technically it turns out to be brilliant. That flat rectangular shape, the two-handed grip, the layout of the D-pad and the A+B buttons, somehow that combination worked.
Yeah, and the source gives us this incredibly specific, crucial detail. His father's right thumb. It had been permanently bent by the arthritis, shaped, as he says, like a backwards letter L.
Wow.
But even with that shape, he could still manipulate and press the buttons on that NES pad without much discomfort.
That detail right there, that's the smoking gun.
Yeah.
That proved the design superiority of the NES controller in this specific context, for this specific need.
It basically defined the ergonomic requirements for the whole business that would follow.
Absolutely. But okay, now we shift from ergonomics to the engineering puzzle. How do you actually connect this beat-up NES controller to a completely different console, like an Atari 7800 or that ColecoVision? They speak different languages.
Right, and this is where the technical core of this deep dive really lies. He wasn't starting completely from scratch, luckily.
He had some prior experience.
Yeah, he mentions a previous project. It involved an old Atari joystick, some servos, and an Arduino microcontroller. And he remembered something key about the Atari's joystick circuitry.
Its simplicity.
Exactly. Electrically, that standard Atari DB9 connector, that 9-pin plug, it's essentially...
Can you elaborate on what that means, like in hardware terms?
Sure. It means each direction, up, down, left, right, and the main fire button, each one is wired directly to its own specific pin on that DB9 connector. So when you push the joystick up, you are literally just closing a physical switch inside that connects that specific up pin to the ground pin. It's a parallel system, 4 simple direction switches and 1 button switch. Very basic.
Okay, got it. Simple parallel switches. That's the Atari. Now contrast that with the NES controller he's holding.
Right. The NES is fundamentally different internally. It's not just sending those simple parallel signals out the cable.
No, because the NES console itself had to manage inputs from 2 controllers simultaneously, potentially plus other peripherals later on. It needed a more efficient system.
So the NES controller uses something called a... what was it?
A serial shift register.
Right. What does that do?
Okay, so inside the NES controller, you still have simple switches for the D-pad and buttons. But instead of wiring each one out directly, the shift register chip takes all those button states, pressed or not pressed, and converts them into a single rapid stream of data, ones and zeros, sent out one bit after another over a single data wire.
Ah, okay. So it takes parallel inputs and turns them into serial output.
Exactly. The console then reads that serial stream and figures out which buttons are being pressed. Much more efficient for handling multiple inputs.
So the big engineering leap here was basically building a translator. He needed to figure out how to get the button press information from the NES controller.
Before it hits that shift register.
Right, before it gets turned into serial data. He needed to grab those simple on-off signals from the NES buttons and D-pad.
And map them directly onto the 5 specific pins the Atari was expecting to see on its DB9 port. Make the NES talk Atari's simple language.
And the method was pure retro engineering. Like you said, cutting the DB9 cable off the old Atari joystick.
Salvaging the essential part.
And then literally cracking open the NES controller casing to get at the circuit board inside.
Yeah.
He wasn't just plugging the NES cable in somewhere.
No, that wouldn't work at all. He was performing surgery. He had to identify the exact points on the NES circuit board, the PCB, where pressing a button closed a circuit.
The contact points.
The contact points. And then physically solder wires from those points directly to the correct corresponding pins on the salvaged Atari DB9 cable, bypassing the NES's own brain, essentially.
This clearly required some serious skills. He lists what he needed, a bit of an electronics background, sure, basic knowledge of PCBs,
Printed circuit boards, yeah.
knowing about capacitors, resistors, diodes, transistors, the basic components.
But maybe even more critical, especially for that first prototype built from salvaged parts.
The hands-on stuff.
Exactly. He mentions needing a steady hand, mad soldering skills, and keen eyesight.
Yeah, working on old, potentially fragile circuit boards with tiny connection points, one slip and you could ruin it.
Especially with vintage hardware that might be hard to replace. This wasn't just theory. It was painstaking, careful, physical work. It shows how you go from being a collector to a creator, and maybe eventually a manufacturer. It's that blend of knowing what to do and being able to physically do it.
And the result, it worked. It was a huge success. He turned that comfortable, familiar NES controller into a fully working Atari 7800 controller.
Which meant his dad could play.
Exactly. His dad could play those classic games on the original console with his family again. That immediate, tangible reward, restoring that participation, that's clearly what fueled everything that came next.
The problem was solved for his dad. But the solution itself, that had potential way beyond just one living room.
Okay, section 3. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because that initial fix, that amazing family moment, it wasn't the end. Not by a long shot.
No, it was the spark.
It was the inciting incident for a much bigger story. That passion project officially became a side business starting around 2017, RetroGameBoyz LLC.
And that transition from a one-off custom mod for a loved one to a legitimate scaling company.
Yeah.
That's the crucial pivot here.
Because in the early days, he really was, a hobbyist in the trenches. He described it as hacking or modding older, disgusting, dirty, yellow NES controllers.
Resourceful? But yeah, labor-intensive. Finding old controllers, cleaning them up, carefully refitting them one by one.
But the operation now, it's completely different. It's night and day.
Yeah.
The business didn't just get bigger, it fundamentally changed its structure.
How so?
They moved from modifying existing old hardware to becoming a dedicated hardware manufacturer.
Okay. That's a huge leap.
Yeah. They now produce their own custom-designed circuit boards, the PCBs. They make their own specific DB9 and DB15 cables, the wire harnesses inside, other parts.
So they control the whole process.
Pretty much. They're building the core product from the ground up. They even use professional methods for the controller casings, things like mold injection, alongside 3D printing for maybe more custom or lower volume arcade stick cases.
Okay, manufacturing your own PCBs. That is a major step up for any small hardware company.
Why is that so significant?
Well, it gives you control over quality, obviously. But more importantly, it ensures standardization and reliability across your products. You can integrate all that complex logic, like the signal translation we talked about, from NES buttons to Atari pins, directly onto a robust, properly designed board.
Instead of hand wiring every single unit.
Exactly. Which is fine for a prototype, but not scalable or consistently reliable for production. Designing your own PCBs moves you from being an artisan, essentially, to being an engineering-driven manufacturer.
And when you look at the scale they've reached, it's genuinely impressive for such a niche, specialized business. I mean, built around fixing the ergonomic flaws of obsolete game controllers.
What are the numbers?
As of the date in our source, the company is nearing 10,000 units sold worldwide.
Wow. 10,000?
Yeah, 10,000 units of various controller configurations sold globally. That's 10,000 people out there who found the specific empathetic solution that RetroGameBoyz offers.
That number, 10,000, it's a real testament to how widespread the underlying problem actually is. Retro hardware is often physically uncomfortable or just plain awkward.
Right.
And the generation that grew up playing these games is now older. They might be dealing with arthritis, carpal tunnel, just reduced dexterity, things that make those original controllers difficult or impossible to use.
So this company didn't just find a niche.
They arguably addressed a neglected health and accessibility need within the whole retro gaming community. It's quite profound, really.
And the true complexity of what they do, their technical expertise, it really shines through when you look at the range of consoles they support. This isn't just an Atari fix anymore.
No, it's like an extensive engineering catalog now.
Yeah.
We should probably go through that list because each console they support represents a unique technical challenge they had to solve.
Absolutely. Think about the matrix of different signals, voltages, pinouts they had to figure out and translate.
Okay, so they cover the common ones. Atari 2600, Atari 7800,
Yep.
the ColecoVision, MSX, Odyssey 2, Amiga. These are mostly digital systems, but they all handle input slightly differently.
But then it gets even more specific, right? They tackle nuances within console families.
Right. Take the Commodore line. They specifically offer solutions for the Commodore GS model, providing true 2-button and even 3-button support.
Okay, why is that a big deal? Standard Commodore joysticks only had one fire button, didn't they?
Exactly. So to add extra buttons that certain Commodore games could recognize, you need extra logic. Their custom PCB has to interpret those additional button presses and cleverly cycle the signals across the limited pins available on the standard Commodore DB9 port using a method the computer understands. It's like an electrical language hack.
Wow. Okay.
And furthermore, they solve that old annoying push-up-to-jump mapping common in so many early games.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Awful.
Terrible. A modern controller expects a dedicated jump button. So their boards have to be smart enough to remap the physical up direction on the D-pad to also trigger a fire button signal, but only when needed, without confusing the game or messing up normal up movement.
That requires some clever programming on the chip level, presumably.
Or at least very clever circuit design. And then we get to the really specialized stuff, controllers that require a completely different engineering approach.
Yeah.
They support the Vectrex.
The Vectrex, the vector graphics console, that had a very unique controller, didn't it? They support both its digital and analog needs.
And that is probably the biggest technical hurdle on their list.
Really?
Why? Because Atari, Commodore, most of those early systems use simple digital switches. The signal is either on-N or O-off-F.
Yeah.
Grounded or not grounded. Simple.
Okay.
The Vectrex, however, used analog joysticks. It relied on potentiometers, variable resistors inside the controller to provide a range of voltage values, indicating how far and in which direction you were pushing the stick.
Ah, so not just on-off, but degrees of movement.
Precisely. So to allow you to use a modern digital D-pad or even a modern analog thumbstick with a Vectrex, RetroGameBoyz had to incorporate analog to digital converters ADCs onto their custom PCBs.
Okay, what does an ADC do?
It measures the incoming analog voltage level from the joystick or D-pad circuit and converts that measurement into a digital number or signal pattern that the original Vectrex console can understand as movement. It's a massive leap in circuit complexity compared to just wiring an NES button to an Atari pin.
That's incredible depth, and their catalog keeps going. Specialized arcade sticks, something called the Joy 2B Plus, a custom Robotron dual D-pad controller for the Atari 7800.
Right, Robotron, 2084. The classic arcade game needed two joysticks, one for moving, one for firing in 8 directions. To replicate that experience on an Atari 7800 using D-pads, you need to handle 2 simultaneous sets of directional inputs.
Which the original 7800 hardware wasn't designed for from a single controller port.
Not without specialized external adapters, usually. So RetroGameBoyz built that dual input logic right into their controller or adapter. They're not just engineering for a console, they're engineering solutions for specific games or genres.
It's amazing.
The sheer breadth of this product list, it just demonstrates absolute mastery of the entire retro hardware landscape, from simple digital switches to complex analog conversion, understanding all the different signaling protocols. They've basically become the go-to source for high-quality, custom ergonomic controllers for that whole 8-bit and early 16-bit era.
Okay, section 4. So this impressive scale, this deep engineering knowledge, it didn't just happen smoothly, right? They faced the kind of struggles you'd expect from a small, custom business operating in a world built for mass production.
Absolutely. Let's start with their commitment to quality, though, because it's remarkable.
Yeah, the feedback metrics. They maintain 100% positive feedback on eBay.
Which is hard to do for any seller, let alone one selling custom electronics.
And on Etsy, they maintain 4.9 stars, which is also incredibly high.
Very high. For specialty hardware, that's phenomenal. These aren't just simple widgets. They're providing complex solutions, often needing customer interaction for troubleshooting or compatibility checks. Near perfect satisfaction is amazing.
And you really feel the personal investment here. The creator mentions that missing 0.1 star on Etsy. He says it's killing him.
And why did they lose it?
Apparently because a customer just ordered the wrong item for their console, didn't check compatibility, and then blamed the seller in the review. It dragged the average down slightly.
Ugh. And that tiny fraction of a star weighing on him so much, that perfectly highlights the emotional difference, doesn't it? Between a mass producer just moving units and a specialty maker where every single sale, every piece of feedback feels personal.
Yeah, they're aiming for perfection in the product, in the service, but they're stuck in the same rating systems as someone selling, I don't know, phone cases by the thousands.
Systems that often unfairly penalize custom vendors for things outside their control, like a customer misunderstanding complex compatibility issues, or just making a mistake when ordering.
And that sensitivity, that fragility in the review metrics, it leads right into the core problem they faced with big platforms.
This Y4 problem, yeah.
The source talks about their attempts to sell on the big marketplaces, Walmart.com and Amazon.
And how did that go?
Not well. The outcome was pretty definitive. They closed both stores down.
Wow. Okay. And connecting this to the bigger picture, it really shows that critical mismatch, that structural incompatibility. The creator summed it up perfectly. He said those platforms absolutely suck for selling anything custom.
Why, though? What specifically makes them so bad for a business like RetroGameBoyz?
Well, think about how Amazon and Walmart marketplaces are built. They run on algorithms optimized for high-volume, standardized products and low-touch transactions. Minimum interaction, maximum speed.
Okay, so how does that hurt a custom maker?
Several ways. First, inventory requirements. Amazon FBA, for example, wants sellers to stock large quantities of standardized items ready for immediate shipping. RetroGameBoyz likely works in smaller, specialized batches, maybe even building to order sometimes.
Yeah.
That model doesn't fit well.
Right.
Return policies. They're often very buyer-friendly, which is great for consumers, but tough for sellers of custom gear. If a customer returns a controller because they misunderstood which version of the CoVision it worked with,
that returned item might be perfectly fine, but it's now technically used and maybe hard for the creator to resell, especially if it was a specific configuration, whereas a standard product just gets tossed back into inventory.
Exactly. And perhaps most critically, the product listing limitations. Those platforms often lack robust fields for customization options or detailed compatibility notes.
It's hard to explain the nuances.
Very hard. How do you clearly list which button mapping is needed for a specific Commodore game? Or why the Vectrex analog version costs significantly more, because it needs that ADC chip inside.
And if customers can't get enough clear information up front,
they inevitably order the wrong thing sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to returns, negative feedback maybe, and that increases the seller's defect rate in the platform's algorithm.
Which can then automatically suspend or shut down the store. It's a vicious cycle.
Mass e-commerce fundamentally favors standardization, simplicity, high volume, high churn, all things that work against a business built on providing careful, customized, empathetic hardware solutions for niche systems.
So it basically forces businesses like this to rely on their own websites or niche marketplaces like Etsy or community forums,
Right.
places where detailed explanation is expected and customer interaction is part of the process.
Yeah, where the transaction can actually be more like a conversation, a relationship.
Which brings us right back around, full circle, to the personal transformation aspect. Because running this complex global niche manufacturing company, that was never the original plan.
Not at all.
The solution for his father and everything that came after, it opened up what he calls a new area of discovery, something that helped him better define who he was outside of his day job and his family role.
He talks about his identity before this started. He felt successful at work, fulfilled in his family life, but he sensed something was missing.
Like an external interest.
Yeah, he said he was almost envious of people who had these defining passions outside of work and family people really into sports or music or cooking or travel. He felt he lacked that core thing that was just his.
And this became that thing.
Exactly. This new hobby, collecting retro games and consoles, tinkering with them, repairing them, figuring out how they worked filled that void. It became something, as he put it, that was just for me.
And it wasn't just solitary basement tinkering either. It led to real connections.
Right. He mentions finding a wonderful community on Twitter, people who share these very specific interests. He made new friends, which must have been incredibly validating, both for the passion itself and for the products he was starting to create.
It creates this powerful feedback loop, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Necessity leads to the project. The project requires learning skills. Those skills connect you to a community, and that community reinforces the passion and helps define you.
The self-reinforcing cycle, exactly. And he even mentions how his love for retro gaming started to positively influence his main career. He found ways to incorporate it into aspects of his job, sometimes even getting company recognition for it.
So the side hustle started positively bleeding back into his professional life.
Yeah. So what does it all mean at the end of the day? That simple, loving act of solving a problem for someone he cared about. It became the engine for his own self-definition. It led to this unique, powerful side business and a new layer to his professional identity.
He didn't just fix broken controllers.
No. He used technology to restore dignity and participation for his father, and in doing that, he accidentally found this missing piece of personal passion and purpose for himself. It's quite a story.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've gone on quite a journey. It started with that moment of frustration and love, a father unable to play the ColecoVision or the Atari 7800 because of rheumatoid arthritis.
A very specific, painful moment.
Then it moved through that clever technical insight, realizing the ergonomic strength of the NE's controller shape could be combined with reverse-engineered signaling for older consoles.
Adapting one system's comfort to another's language.
Right through to building this thriving global custom hardware business, a business that had to master really complex electronics challenges from simple Atari DB9 switches all the way up to analog to digital conversion for the Vectrex.
And now nearing 10,000 units sold worldwide. It's remarkable.
The journey really shows that true ingenuity often isn't about inventing something totally new out of thin air. It's about connecting existing things, existing technologies, existing designs in novel ways, often driven by empathy.
Absolutely. It was about understanding the simple parallel nature of the Atari connection, recognizing the superior comfort of the NES pad for his father's hands, and then applying genuine technical skill, knowing PCBs, shift registers, ADCs, to bridge that gap and solve that deeply human problem.
It's such a powerful lesson in finding purpose through necessity. And the creator's own final advice, which he shared with his community, feels like the most resonant takeaway from all of this.
What was that?
He said, "If perhaps you have not found your passion yet, it may pop up when you least expect it."
That's great advice. And maybe our final thought builds directly on that. This whole deep dive seems to show that sometimes the real passion isn't the skill itself. It wasn't just the electronics knowledge or the soldering ability.
Right.
It was the reason he applied the skill. The driving purpose was empathy, connection, inclusion.
So maybe the provocative thought for you, the listener, is this. Think about a specific frustrating barrier in your own life, or maybe in someone else's life close to you, something you wish you could just eliminate or fix.
It probably won't involve an NES controller or a ColecoVision.
How? Probably not.
But that underlying need, the need for a solution born out of real necessity, real frustration, maybe even love, that's often where the key lies. It might unlock an unexpected new area of discovery for you, maybe even a defining purpose you didn't even know you were looking for.